So for the past 2 years, Andrew Schulz and the Flagrant podcast have been absolutely blowing up to levels never seen before, especially for a comedian who technically still doesn't have a comedy special on one of the big streaming platforms. And even then, his podcast still got over 18 million monthly views on YouTube alone. And his podcast episode with Joe Rogan, I think, has nearly 40 million views, which is absolutely insane. And on top of that, his self-released comedy special that he put out on YouTube, which we'll cover later on, has over 18 million views, which is technically up there with comics like Mark Norman and Shane Gillis in terms of overall reach and views. However, for the past 2 years, Andrew Schulz has been slowly turning into what him and his RoganSphere comic friends would always hate on.
Goes in my mouth.
That's extra right there. You gotta pay extra for that one. Gross.
Oh my God.
Because for the past 2 years, or ever since the new studio, Andrew Schulz has been playing this over-the-top character who's always fake laughing, interrupting all the time, and is always trying to come across as an intelligent person or as a modern-day philosopher. And funny enough, the first person to ever call it out was actually Whitney Cummings. And now looking back, it does make sense why we covered that episode, because it was shocking how bad Andrew Schulz was treating Whitney Cummings for no reason, especially because they were supposed to be old friends.
Listen, it's tough being a female
Is this like the
comic.
new Adderall? Is this like the new
I
Is this
miss
a new
Adderall.
batch?
I want
feel like you
Adderall.
got a wonky batch.
No,
this feels
I'm
like
on 3 Zins.
I love that you just called me a dog and like
No,
that was
because
like,
when you think I'm setting you up for something, you
cute
do
dog,
this
though.
thing where you're like this.
no, this is just how I look best in the light. I'm getting older, Andrew.
Oh.
You mocking that biological age thing. Let's not pretend that you have become a complete dork. I listened to your last episode where you guys were like, and we're talking about why women are more admitted into college more and that men don't. Who gives a when did you guys become such dorks? Who cares?
Thanks. Free tape.
What the
Come on.
free tape?
I'm Team Andrew Tate,
Like
bro.
what?
Free
Dude,
tape.
I was down when you guys were like hanging out with Alex Jones and the fake star from North Korea, and now you guys are like the fake. What did Emma take down your Die Hard poster? What's going on? What's going on at home, man?
You come in.
What's going on at home?
You come in and you tell me that you're lying about
What's
something.
going on? Are you shooting?
I need to get to the bottom
Are
of
you
it.
shooting blanks? Why are you such a grump?
Yes. How am I grumpy?
You have some rage at me, Andrew. This is a new kind of rage.
This is a good.
And the wild thing is that it now seems like we have been witnessing the slow downfall of the RoganSphere, especially with the whole recent situation with Two Bears, One Cave, which I think we can all agree that that podcast has absolutely hit rock bottom. And although I don't think Andrew Schulz is nearly as bad as Tom or Bert Kreischer in terms of, what they've done recently, the main criticism is of Andrew Schulz as a podcast or a show host, and also the fact that he has let the fame and the massive success actually change him, as cliche as that sounds. And even though, yes, technically on paper the show is still massively successful, there is no denying that Andrew Schulz has changed a lot, and it was very drastic. And now the show has gained a reputation of not being the nicest to the guests, making them feel uncomfortable at times, and also having little limits to what questions and subjects they are willing to bring up in that podcast.
Love you, buddy. Yo, you know who could be a good fill-in is Trash Tuesday. If you want to get them on a podcast, they could have some.
What's with the Trash Tuesday beef? When are we going to settle the Trash Tuesday beef?
It's settled as far as
Did you try to wog Annie Letterman to your truck?
No, it doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't make senth. No.
Okay, so then follow up.
Why does it not make sense? Why does that make sense?
It's her perspective.
Oh wow!
I don't know, Dave. I don't know.
No, I don't.
Because you know what that clip was going to do.
But I didn't do it.
His point would be, and I'm a fan, but I have to say this, his point would be, if she says off the record, it's off the record.
No, I disagree. If she says off the record, no, it's not true.
Yeah, a misogynist would say that.
I think there's a lot of reading into this clip right now. Like it's like
Here's what I think though. I think
I do believe
it's a joke, man.
I mean, that's a cop out.
Yeah,
it's a cop. Like if your show is educational and I'm trying to help people, and then when I make
when I say something wrong, oh, that was a joke.
I run around the room. We gotta make it entertaining too, bro.
I think
ninja stuff.
I'm
like,
always
we make
gonna be
jokes, bro.
on the side. I'm always gonna be on the side of jokes, and that's just who I am. I'm a comedian. I support.
We
that,
also
and I
can't
support-
necessarily ask him to have the same empathy as us as
Yeah, of
comedians.
course. Al's not a
That's
comedian.
a black dude.
Al's not a
so
comedian.
that's
But
not
a comedian, I always
So
gotta
I
defend.
But this wasn't always the case. I mean, at some points, Flagrant 2 was actually one of the best podcasts out there, and I actually found Andrew Schulz through his crowd work clips and YouTube videos, and then I realized that he had a podcast and started listening then. But it wasn't until March 14 of 2019 that Andrew Schulz had his first appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience, which would completely change his life and take his career to the next level.
Hey, Andrew, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. What's up?
Chilling, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, dude.
Of course, of course.
Hey, I like what you're doing.
Thank you.
I like a lot of things you're doing. First of all, I like that you decided to put all your shit on YouTube. You're
Yes.
like, you know, like how do you get your shit out there? Well, just put it out there on YouTube.
Exactly that.
Huh?
Yeah. I mean, everybody just said no to me. That was the thing. So,
however, as soon as Joe Rogan actually went on the Flagrant podcast, it was game over. That actually placed the podcast among the top, and then technically or officially made Andrew Schulz part of the RoganSphere, which is not a bad thing. It's not to discredit him, because keep in mind that Joe Rogan also did a bunch of other podcasts. He did Theo Von's podcast. He did Two Bears, One Cave, Kill Tony, obviously, and then Tim Dillon, and nobody did what Andrew Schulz did. However, one of the potential downsides of being part of this group of RoganSphere comedians is that it does give these comics an insane level of confidence that could end up backfiring. And in Andrew Schultz's case, although he doesn't deny or hide the fact that he grew up pretty wealthy, it is clear that at this point he's become so massively successful and famous that it's that naturally he's become out of touch. Not only that, but it also seems like he wants all the attention and is trying to be more like the Joe Rogan podcast. And I don't think anybody in his own team is calling it out. So it's left to comedians like Shane Gillis and others to come on the podcast, realize that Andrew Schulz is acting wild, and then call it out themselves.
Yeah, I have
Then
everything I
depressed.
need, and I'm not happy as angst.
Feel.
Whoa.
You got your nails painted. You look like an angst.
I love,
You know what I mean?
I love Schultz
What are you
epiphanies.
talking about?
Schultz epiphanies are my favorite.
Yo.
He repeats his statement. He's like,
That's crazy, though. It's true.
Schultz epiphanies.
That should be making you gasses
So
you, though,
good,
right?
dude.
When Schultz
I know
has
when
a
he
you're
quotes
like,
you.
I did it, yo! I did it!
It's true.
I'm keeping him on, dude. If
might
I
as
take him
well
off
be on
now, he
Zoom.
wins.
Okay.
I know, exactly. Come on. man.
That's right. It's a competition thing. It's not that. I really genuinely just feel
No,
like
it
I
is a
can connect
competition thing.
more.
You're the one trying to take my glasses off, man.
Can we reframe
you
it?
hate that we're focusing
Can we
on Akash
reframe
right
it?
now.
You know what I
Just,
really
it's not
want?
about you for a second. Akash.
Okay. Anyway, so more that was good. Some more questions.
That was good.
Some
You
more
really
questions
got
about
under the skin
Akash.
with that.
It was good. It was
You
good.
really got
I
under
know
the skin.
the under the skin. No, but it was a
Yeah,
good.
no way,
definitely-
no way.
No, I admit it. If it's good, it's good. The
That's-
epiphany was great. That
that's
was
one of those.
that was like a deflection, so you
I
don't
hear
have to ask Akash more questions you don't care about. But go on.
I do care. I do
You
care.
asked him
I
a question like,
genuinely
"What
do.
about your song?" I'll tell you about mine.
Nuh-uh. He said, "Why did you pick that?" I answered.
Oh, you're so good.
But
so
This
curious.
is how you have an interest in people.
Yeah.
And although, yes, those episodes did extremely well when it comes to views, and they were very funny, a big part of it was that you had people, comedians like Shane Gillis or Whitney Cummings, who actually knew Andrew Schulz outside of the podcast, because not only did they handle the situation well, but they were also able to essentially turn it around and give Andrew Schulz a taste of his own medicine, because they were calling out things that were actually true. And you could tell that Andrew Schulz was getting bothered by the whole thing, even though he did try to play it off, like the fact that he likes to have an epiphany for every single thing that is said on the podcast, and the fact that he doesn't like it too much when the attention is not 100% on him. However, the big issue is that whenever you have a guest that is not on the same level as someone like Shane Gillis, it can really catch them off guard and send the wrong message, because I mean, now it's very clear that Andrew Schultz's goal is to simply get the best clip or the craziest episode, regardless of what that means for the guest. For example, if at some point a guest actually gets upset or mad at something that Andrew Schulz said, it's essentially a win for Schulz, because he gets the content, and if he handles the whole thing pretty well, then he gets to look good, which is something that was made clear when they had Fresh and Fit on the podcast.
That's dangerous.
Here's the thing. One person in the relationship, whoever cares less, has the leverage, and we want the guy to always care less.
That's
We want the man to
wild.
always
That's
have the leverage.
childish as
And you guys might not like hearing
is
that.
childish.
But we truly feel.
I'm not.
that
These
you
aren't
have to-
new beliefs, bro. You're not telling me none of us have ever heard. We all heard this from fraternity guys in college. I'm saying there's room in and I don't have a problem with a lot of the stuff you say. I just think there is room for growth. And you guys' refusal to acknowledge it almost kind of proves it to me, confirms it to me that you guys are not willing to grow right now. And that's fine. That's some ego. And be like, okay, maybe there's room for growth. And y'all ain't even willing to do that for an hour and a half.
I mean, I truly feel that
That's your opinion, bro.
yeah, that's your opinion.
See what I'm saying?
I don't care.
For what we
You
say
guys
is
have a platform. You say whatever you
with
want.
men and women.
Now, we have talked about this many times in the past, and at the end of the day, I do think it was on Fresh and Fit for not being able to destroy Andrew Schulz and Akash on their own show, because even though they argue that it was heavily edited, there is still enough footage to see that it was clear that they were not prepared for that encounter. They thought it was going to be a chill podcast, and they were caught off guard. However, it was very clear that Andrew Schulz and everyone else went in there with a plan, with an agenda to try and make them look the worst way possible, because Andrew Schulz essentially turned off his podcast personality and started acting very serious when talking to them. And now looking back, he kind of did something similar with the whole Steiny situation. And although I still think that Steiny was definitely in the wrong, there is no denying that Andrew Schulz wasn't acting how he usually acts on podcasts. And again, now looking back, it was probably because the Nelk boys were not starstruck or being fanboys, in front of Andrew Schulz. And since he likes the attention and people to really, really praise him, he probably took that personally.
I pretty early on realized that like Kyle and Stein don't really know me that well. Because the questions they're asking are like really basic questions.
Like, what's an example?
Has anybody ever like heckled you? And there's a moment in the pod, I don't know if they edited it, but where I'm like, what? And they're like, have you ever like talked to someone in the crowd? So I'm thinking two different things in this moment. I'm going, either they have no clue who I am, and that's weird that I would even be here.
Annoying, yeah.
Or they know and it's a troll. And then I think maybe Steiny asked me one more question, and it could have been genuine from him, but it felt like trolling. And I was like, who is this Chicken McNugget asking me shit? like who is this guy?
I'm trying to film a commercial.
And look, for a while, a lot of people did point towards Andrew Schulz potentially taking stuff. And he also did joke around about taking Zins or whatever, and that being the reason for him having too much energy. Which it could be the case. That's probably not that's probably part of it. But what I think is more likely is that ever since the whole rebrand from Flagrant 2 to Flagrant, the greatest hang on the universe or whatever, Schulz has been playing and overdoing this crazy character, especially when they have guests on, in order to try and keep the podcast super flagrant and wild. So because of that, it can come across as fake or annoying sometimes, because back then when they had the podcast, they could talk about nothing or any random subject, and what made it good was the people having the conversation. However, now that they're technically a YouTube version of a talk show or a late night show, they got to keep it up every single time, and the quality can start to suffer, which is why all those late night TV shows have tons of people working all at the same time, to try and help out the main guy. And that can still lead to, the main guy burning out. But now imagine if somebody like Jimmy Fallon was also working on a comedy special, doing a massive world tour, had a Patreon and a second podcast, and was also shooting a movie. I mean, that would be insane. And at some point, something has to suffer. By the way, if you made it this far, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps out so much, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Do you think people really have an issue with nepotism, or they have an issue with themselves just not getting a role?
Hollywood's never been like fair. Why should it be?
That's
I mean,
thing.
it's like neither
Okay.
sports.
Now
Like,
this is a fucking wild take that the guys don't really appreciate.
I think it's sorry. Can I say something about
No,
Nepo
I
babies?
was in the middle of a sentence.
I know, but if we're
I
moving
know,
on.
but we're not moving on.
But
It's about
do-
this.
okay.
It's about this. The Nepo babies' parents, right? A lot of them.
Yeah. And the way the nervous system works is through contrast. You only see light objects through dark objects and so on. So this like playing of the sort of playing of things that are
sneakers where you see each one of the toes. It's like, that's a hint.
Exactly, it's the hint, right? So now we're into the realm of sort of like
me with those things,
exactly.
bro. And sometimes on the subway they'll like wiggle them like that. I'm like, you better stop that.
Right. So if you look if you look historically at clothing, you can think of like Victorian era clothing or like the high collar, everything covered, just the face, the pasty face. Or you think about,
if we're gonna think about this night, you have 3 people who go to a party. It's Kylie Jenner's party. They're all intoxicated. Apparently, one of them is about to be passed out.
Try one of these.
What is this? I'm good.
It's not weed. It's a Zyn.
It's nicotine.
Oh hell no!
No.
You're gonna be hooked. I'm good.
It's not about a hook.
And also the whole interrupting situation on that show has gotten way out of control. I mean, just on their last episode, they had Russ on the show, and at some point he literally had to ask everybody to allow him to talk, and then eventually he got the point and just started talking over everyone and not even letting Andrew Schulz speak, which you could tell he was not a big fan of that. And once again, to be fair, it is no longer a podcast and it's more of a talk show, so obviously there will be more interruptions, but that was the reason why comedians or podcast comedians would hate the morning radio, the morning TV, and the late night shows, because it was a platform where they would do the gotcha questions and not really let you be yourself. And funny enough, I'm pretty sure that now whoever thinks about going on the Flagrant podcast or the Flagrant show has to consider that they got to be sharp and able to handle whatever they throw at them. For example, the whole Whitney Cummings episode was absolutely insane. It was so wild, but at the very least, she was able to come out on top because somehow Andrew Schulz actually made her look better. However, I do think that Andrew Schulz's erratic behavior actually peaked back in December when he did that episode with DJ Academics.
You won't get hooked.
Hell no. I'm good.
It's like a dip. Just try it.
No.
Will you just try it?
I got addictive personality for real.
This is not going to make you addicted.
No. Like I have a really addictive, you see whatever you're doing right there, you're going to see me like with a mouthful of acorns. No, we're not doing it.
Just try it.
Nah, I can't do it, brother.
You can literally take it out a second afterwards. You're not going to feel anything.
Hell no.
Just try one.
No, I can't do it, brother. I can't do it, bro.
Just try the white boy shit for one. Why are you so afraid? We drank Hennessy the whole time. We finished a whole. Why not just try one?
No, because I'm gonna be addicted.
You're not gonna be addicted. It's such a stupid thing to think.
And when you see
also,
me,
you're probably an alcoholic anyway. So what are you concerned about Zyn for?
Probably.
So all right, so hold on. Let me ask you a question, Akash. When you see me.
Now, to be fair, that episode was the last one of the year. They were drinking, and it was more of a laid-back episode with DJ Academics, and it wasn't his first time, so, you would assume that they were more comfortable with each other. But even DJ Axe was caught off guard by the way that Andrew Schulz was acting, not only by making fun of Fresh and Fit getting demonetized, when just last year he was telling DJ Academics himself that Andrew Schulz had nothing against them, but also by essentially trying to force him to try those sins, which was a very tough thing to watch. And that would also happen with different guests on different episodes, which would make the show a hit or miss at times. I still think that the show is pretty good, but it's definitely going down a path that we've seen other people take before. However, since Tom and Bert Kreischer have set the bar way too low, I don't think Flagrant will ever get to the point that Two Bears, One Cave is at now, but I could be wrong. However, the one thing that was very disappointing and a sign that the show was definitely changing was how Andrew Schulz now, for the second time, has decided to avoid a subject just because it wasn't the best look for him or someone that he liked, which is a fair thing to do. I mean, it's his podcast at the end of the day, but that is not very Flagrant. Now, when he did it to Logan the first time, it was kind of understandable. Logan Paul rarely does podcasts or shows, so, Andrew was basically trying to be nice, and plus, Andrew Schulz wasn't going to accomplish anything. But when he did it the second time with Katt Williams, it was wild.
Can we talk about how Katt Williams,
the greatest,
is not only one of the greatest comedians of all time, incredibly hilarious, but he is, without a doubt, the greatest marketer in the history of comedy.
Whoa.
Katt Williams went on one podcast.
Not against it.
Went on one podcast, did one interview, and sold out his next tour 2 or 3 times over, I bet. Is he making shit up left and right? Is he saying shit that's true left and right? Sure. But when you mix truth and made up, what did we learn from the Epstein? It's entertaining.
It's very entertaining, but I think it's all facts.
All facts?
All facts.
Let me ask you this question. If he's coming to New York, are we going to the show?
Absolutely.
I think the reason why, again, I'm not exactly sure, but if you don't like some of these people already, you don't f with them, they don't f with you, you don't have anything to lose by saying these things, right? You could lose potential future relationships with them, but if you don't give a f about that, then you're good to go.
But yeah, so he just like goes at everyone. Faison Love, P. Diddy, Martin Lawrence.
Not a single person sued him. It's all facts. It's all facts.
He went an earthquake. It's just like a lot of, I don't know.
That is the thing. It's like, if you're a comedian, you can't sue when another comedian makes fun of you or says something. You got to come back with jokes.
Now, we did cover this back when it happened, and I was actually shocked and disappointed at how Andrew Schulz completely ignored the most important thing that Katt Williams said about Joe Rogan. Not that he wouldn't have him on the podcast, but that he would always push the same 6 comedians that have never been funny, because it did talk about everything that Katt Williams said except for that one comment, which is wild, because keep in mind that back when it happened with Dave Chappelle, when Dave was on the Joe Rogan Experience and essentially told them that he wasn't the biggest fan of what Andrew Schulz was doing on Netflix, Schulz actually brought it up and discussed the whole thing on the show. But it was probably because Joe Rogan was trying to defend him and trying to explain how Andrew Schulz was actually a genius. And once again, that actually shows you a perfect example of someone that is in the RoganSphere, because there is nothing wrong with Dave Chappelle not liking what Schulz is doing. I mean, I think expecting everyone to like what you do is pretty wild, which is fair, but I think a comic should have been able to handle that and make it funny. At the end of the day, that was the same advice that he was giving Brendan Schaub when he was dealing with his haters.
I could shit on cancel culture all day.
It's just boring. That's the thing. It's not that funny and it's boring. So if you're a comedian, to talk about it a lot is kind of boring, and unfunny.
And it's marketing. It's like, hey, like, my special was so extreme that the streaming services wouldn't take it without me editing out my favorite bits. So I'm going to put it on this site where you've got to pay for it. And if you guys don't pay $20 for this special, then I guess my career's over and the woke mob won. That's marketing. Do what you got to do to sell your special. That's great. It is 100% marketing. None of that stuff actually happened. In the NFL, here's the metaphor I like to use. In the NFL, every single year, before the season starts, they change the rules a little bit. They changed the rules to help the offensive players. You can't hit the quarterback. You can't make contact with the receiver. You can't tackle him this way. And the defensive players get mad, and they complain for a week. They're like, this sucks. Why don't they just put a dress on the guy? This is gonna be tough. And then the first game of the season, you have no excuses. You go and play the game. You can't miss a tackle and say, well, these rules, no one gives. They only care about the score. Football players all shut up when the season starts and they play the game with the new rules. Cancel culture, these are the new rules that we have in this society. But hopefully I'll have a decision by next week. I will let you guys know if it's going to be Netflix, Amazon, or maybe I'll charge my fans. Maybe I'll charge everybody $20 each to watch it, and then I'll put it on YouTube like a day later. How about that? How about I get $50 from everybody? Because it's so edgy. We'll see. Anyway.
Now, obviously, we can't confirm if Anthony was actually talking about Andrew Schulz and the infamous special, but there is no doubt that the whole thing was very controversial when it was first released for free on YouTube. We did cover the whole thing when it first came out back then, but nobody really watched it. And back then, it was a little shocking seeing the whole special uploaded to YouTube, especially after he said that it was only going to be available for 2 weeks, and then extended it for another 2 weeks, and then he just put it on YouTube. And although that was kind of sketchy, I didn't think it was that bad.
It is what it is. We understand everything exists on the internet, and if you don't know how to figure out one of them pirating sites, I'm sure one day in the future I'll have it up on my YouTube channel. You can wait for that. I just want to say thank you guys so much for your interest. Thank you guys so much for your support.
However, there were some obvious things that Andrew Schulz did which were not the most honest. For example, he did make it sound like the special had a lot of jokes that were just too wild for streaming services and platforms, so he had to buy it back and put it up behind a paywall. And also, the whole time he did make it sound like if it was Netflix, the streaming service that he was dealing with, But according to A RoganSphere, it was actually Amazon.
And they go, well, this is flagged. And they go, look, he's on stage. They go, oh, okay. No, this probably means the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah, it could, because I mean, I'm sure the notes are, because I know what Andrew went through with Netflix and stuff.
Amazon.
That was Amazon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they go, well, we don't want you to make.
When the whole hype was that you only had those 2 weeks to watch it and then it was gone forever. So once again, all that criticism is fair, but even then, I still don't think it was that big of a deal. Maybe if he would have done all that and then put out something that was so bad, like 69 minutes, then that would have been a problem, because for what it is, his comedy special was pretty decent. The truth is, I never really saw Andrew Schulz as one of the best stand-up comedians. Again, I found him through his crowd work special, the clips and all that stuff, and then the podcast. So not really a huge fan of his written stand-up jokes, if that makes sense. Now, once again, it was pretty good for what it was, but I think we can all agree that it was mostly all hype and marketing. But my biggest criticism for all the RoganSphere comedians, including Andrew Schulz, is how much they stopped caring about their podcasts and shows to try and make their dream of being a stand-up comedian a reality. And also another thing that affects the podcast or the show a lot, and that Andrew Schulz has actually talked about in the past, is the fact that as they get bigger and more successful, they don't have time to live their regular life and sit back and just reflect and try to come up with new material.
You coming up with a new hour?
Well, I got to live. That's why I took some time off. I was constantly on the road, this and that and the other thing. I had no time to even live my life to extract any material. Yep. So I said, you know what? Let me take a beat here. Let me concentrate on other things, whether it be a TV show, the podcast. Let me spend some time with my family. Smart. And I was talking to Chris Rock about this, and he kind of put it, he goes, there's no way you could make an entrance if you never leave the room.
Yeah.
And
get slapped a bit.
Yeah.
Is that his advice?
Again, I didn't know where he was going with that.
As an animal.
But yeah,
you gotta live. You gotta have something to talk about.
Live a life worth talking about.
There's a thing that sometimes you see comics doing with it. As part of their joke, they're referencing when they did. One time I did this in Alabama, and then this happened. And every time I see it, I'm like, oh, you're not living a life outside of comedy.
Yeah.
Like the only things that are happening to you that are like worth talking about are the other things that are happening in comedy.
Yeah.
And people don't do comedy.
They don't do comedy.
They live life.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, you got to extract from real life experiences.
Now, at the end of the day, Andrew Schulz is still massively successful, and we've talked about this in the past, but he should probably try and sell as many tickets as he can while he has the opportunity. However, he should definitely put a little bit more effort into the podcast. But once again, at the end of the day, I don't think Andrew Schulz is nearly as bad as Tom or Bert Kreischer, at least not yet. And he does reinvest a lot of money back into the show. For example, the new studio was completely unnecessary, but it does look very, very nice. And they probably have the best looking studio out of all the podcasts out there. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. Leave a like and subscribe to support the channel. Dislike if you didn't like the video. But that is all we have for today. See ya.